Hi, everybody. Welcome to Office Hours. If you're watching on YouTube, you can find out more about what we do at officehours.global. Our first hour is general discussion about virtual media, media production, virtual production, all those things. And second hour is usually something we want to spend a little bit more time on. Today, we're going to talk about IBC. We already did talk about IBC, but we're going to talk about how we talked about IBC. So that'll be in the second hour. So if you've got questions about how we did that production, where the whole team or a lot of the team is coming in to talk about that, so and show you behind the scenes and what it took to put together probably one of the more amazing coverages of a convention that we've seen. So anyway, so stay tuned for that in the second hour and throw your questions in now into Makana. Let's go ahead and jump into the questions. Bill, what do we got?
Our first one comes from Matthias, and I believe it's Jutila. I hope I'm getting that close to right, in Helsinki, Finland. And Matthias says, what ways are there to pull Q&A information back to your production system for displaying it on screen when answering? Any recommendations or platforms and or systems to use? Go ahead, Richard.
Yeah, I think it depends a little bit about where you're pulling from. But two of the key recommendations that from the last few years that I've used are HR Graphics and SPX. And SPX has a new option with the SPX Social that allows you to connect into lots of different social accounts. And H2R Graphics from John Barker also allows you to connect into YouTube and other kind of places to pull information from chat if you're looking to get your Q&A from kind of YouTube chat or places like that.
Yeah, and if you're using some kind of, the other ones is to look at what kind of platform you're starting with. So if you have something like Slido or in our case, Makana is pretty flexible. We put it out into lots of different versions. That's the version that we use here for the show. And we can drive data, we drive SPX, those types of things. If you are looking for Slido is another one that's available. And really the worst case scenario is you need something that's pretty good at you cutting and pasting into it, from something else. If you have to move it, H2R graphics and others, and even something like StreamYard, Restream, all of those have some way to automatically go grab some of those things. You'll have trouble on some platforms, more trouble than others, dealing with, for instance, tokens on YouTube and so on and so forth, depending on how big your event is. So those are other things to kind of take into account when you're working on it. Go ahead, Mitchell.
An alternative would be New Blue, Title Pro. One of the things they do really well is they have lots of templates, so you can get a look real fast if you need to do something quickly, particularly for a sporting event.
One of the things that we've also been able to do is, for both lower thirds and for questions and so on and so forth, is you can, and we don't do this much anymore, but we had a script that in Photoshop, literally a written script in Photoshop that would go out, grab out into an Excel file, and then just grab all of the data, throw it into the lower third, formatted, and as it did that, push them all into an Atem switcher. So, as stills. And so that's another possibility. I don't have the answer of exactly how to do that, but it's something that can be done for you to think about. All right, next question.
Our next question comes to us from Nick Batt in the UK, and Nick says, I only have Wi-Fi. It's fast. For an event, I want to have a 5G device tethered via Ethernet to provide some redundancy. Is there a way to bond both in OS X, the machine the stream will be sent from, and is Speedify the only option, and is it any good?
It's not the only option. So Speedify, some people here have used it relatively successfully. The other option would be using a PEP link or PEPWave. You would then be able to have the 5G. In fact, with some of those, I believe you can get the 5G modem. You can actually get the SIM card for it and just put it right into the device. And those will bond potentially, depending on how big it is, you can bond many things. Now, usually with that, you do need, if you want to bond it, you typically are going to need something on the other end that is the bandwidth. So usually it's a piece of hardware. I think PEPWave now has a cloud service as well that will bond multiple things together and allow you to make that work. So that might be another thing to do. And of course, the heavy gun there would be a live view. Next question.
Next one comes to us from Hasma Gajar, a friend in Cape Town, South Africa. I know it's in the past, but in ZoomISO V1, if everyone is in the same meeting and I am pulling ISOs from the Zoom grid in that one and only meeting, will audio be in sync or not for each of the ISOs?
Go ahead, Richard.
Yeah, with ZoomISO version 1, the audio is what you get from the meeting already. So whether someone's in sync will often depend mostly upon the end user who's pumping their audio into the meeting themselves. Have they got it in sync from their end before it arrives in Zoom? And then Zoom will just deliver it. And then ZoomISO will only take out the general overall audio from the meeting. There is a caveat to that in that if you do something like office hours where you have multiple Zoom bots, the audio will be different depending upon the Zoom bots. But if you've only got one Zoom bot, then the audio will basically be in sync unless the user has put the audio into the system out of sync.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, one thing I want to add to that is if you have totally separate pipelines for your audio and video, say you're sending video out through Siphon, then black Siphon to a DeckLink card or to NDI, while your audio is being sent out a totally different path, you will have to line those up no matter what.
Yep. And, the big problem is when you try to line them up, you have to line them all up at the same time. You only have one feed that's coming out of those. So one of the things that to really look at, ZoomISO 2 right now that it's in beta, we are given every assurance and every observation we've had is it's more stable than ZoomISO 1. So we would highly recommend moving to ZoomISO 2 as fast, even though it's a new thing. The interface makes much more sense to me, at least, and it is a more stable platform. So my recommendation would be the way to fix this would be go to ZoomISO 2 and then start looking at how you're going to use something like Loopback or Dante or something. You now have individual control over those things, and now you can resync everybody individually. Go ahead, Mitchell.
Alex, doesn't ISO 2 not require Siphon? It goes directly to the DeckLink?
Yeah, it'll go directly to the DeckLink cards, yeah. And so now the reason you would use Siphon, so I'm trying to build as many different versions of this as I can. So I'm going to be using Siphon to go to MimoLive. So if I want to do it on a Mac Studio with MimoLive running in ZoomISO, running there, I'll use Siphon to send the video to it. I don't need a Blackmagic card. If I'm going to do it to hardware, which I have, Amazon lost my box. But as soon as that comes, as soon as it shows up, I will I'll once I get that fixed, I'll be doing it into a Atem switcher, into the SDI switcher, and in that case, I'd go directly to the Blackmagic card. Next question.
Next one comes to us from Todd Reynolds in North Adams, Massachusetts. And Todd says, I'm about to have to buy my first spool of cable and connectors to make SDI cables as we build a studio. Can you point me to an all-you-need-to-know source for learning and or buying along with your advice? Thanks.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I would go ahead and speak to your local distributor of coaxial cable, whoever it may be. Like, I think B&H might be a good place to go, or maybe give MarkerTech or Full Compass a call. They can guide you through there are dozens and dozens of choices for coaxial cable. 75 ohms is what you need. But I will post in Mokana chat a couple of links from Belden that may be helpful for you.
Go, Jason.
If you want to spend a lot of money, Alex has the world's greatest way to make SDI cables. Other than that, I'd say in a pinch, Klein tools and quad shield cable will work in a pinch, but I wouldn't trust it if I could.
Yeah, and I have I was trying to find to see if I had the links here real quick to see if I can. We are. Clark Cable is where we buy our cables. We buy it in rolls of 1,000, typically 1,000 feet. And the one that now for not long runs, when you start building the whole kit, you want to think about thin cables because they take up less room. They're easier to work with. And so we are using 23 gauge cable for all of our shorter runs. And when I say shorter runs, really anything under 25 feet, we can run there. And I believe that the 12G version of this is a CD7523 UHD. Are the Clark, what we buy from Clark. I am a huge fan, as people have heard me say over and over again, of rear twist, Neutrik rear twist cables. You can get multiple colors. I use the resistor code, so I give them different ones so that I have 1 through 0 through 1 or 0 through 9, in colors so that I can keep track of things. But I change a lot of those cables. You can get multiple colors of cables and multiple colors of ends. And when you start mixing and matching those, It does look a little colorful, and people sometimes don't like that, but it really makes it easier if you need to route something and figure it out. You can sometimes look at that and go, I know this is the first out or the third out or whatever, just by looking at the cable. So those are some things to think about related to the cables. We use Coastal, I believe it's Coastal Tools. You can ping me about it. We'll try to put it there, but it's a motorized wire stripper. And if you ping JJ, maybe we'll post it or somewhere. We'll do a lab. But JJ's done it in the past and shown everybody because he makes a lot of cables, or he has. Basically, you just push it in, hit the button, pull it out, and it's got the 3 different depths cut. Now you have to tune that a little bit to make that work, but it's a lot faster and more predictable than doing it by hand. So if you're going to make hundreds of if you're making 5 or 6 cables, a little one with the finger is fine. If you're making hundreds of cables, having a motorized one makes a big difference in time and effort. The other thing is that when you strip off I use these. I use this one specifically. It's a silicon end to a tweezers, but I took one side of the tweezer off so that I can use it. And basically, when I want to take that piece off, I wedge it under there and pull it off. Keeps it from damaging the wires. As you pull it off, use something metal, you'll nick them. And so to the shield. So those are some things to think about. We should do a video about it. Mickey?
And yeah, just to add to that, generally speaking, the thicker the gauge of a cable, the longer it can run, the longer it's rated for a run at a specific flavor of SDI.
That's right. I mean, almost everything is 12G if it's less than 3 feet. So it's just almost everything you can buy is 12G at less than 3 feet. It's as you go longer. You can get up to about 1,000 feet with it, but it's really that SDI or that BNC or coax tends to be very thick and very inflexible. So when it's more flexible too, you're going to find that it tends to not go as far. It just it's going to lose more signal on the way there. But keep on asking questions. Next question.
Next one comes from Mitchell Hill in Wilmington, Delaware. I watched Tuesday's office hours show on YouTube via Apple TV. It was streaming 4K video and looked great. Anything planned for the near future to make it even better?
Go ahead, Mickey.
And I just wanted to mention that we are currently broadcasting in 1080p, so there might be something in your pipeline that is upscaling it from 1080 to UHD.
Yeah. Go ahead, Mitchell.
Coming right out of Apple TV, it says 4K, so you know. And it looked good. You know, you see a little bit of artifacting because the 1080 upscaling that was happening for whatever reason caused a little bit of smearing, just a tiny bit. But overall, I was very impressed with it. I know I'm not supposed to look at myself on TV, but once in a while, I'm just checking to see if I'm ready for plugs yet.
I think it's too late. So anyway, so I think that the next step for us is to go to actual 4K, which you won't see on a one-up, but when you see the super sources, when you see the grids, when you see graphics, when you see a bunch of other bits and pieces, you'll see 4K there. So that's something that we're kind of moving towards. So 4K HDR, we're also looking at 5.1. So your home TV coming out of your Apple TV with YouTube, the YouTube app, should be able to go to 5.1. Do you have 5.1, Mitch?
Yes, I do. And
so you'll be able to test
interesting thing too, just real quick, the graphics were very, very sharp. They definitely were at 4K.
They're definitely at 1080 because we're not streaming at 4K, but it just means that your upscaler, the upscaler wherever that is doing great. so it's what that probably is the handshake. The Apple TV did a handshake with your TV. Your TV says I'll do 4K, and Apple TV said okay, and then it's either the Apple TV or the TV scaling. But it's great, and hopefully it'll look even better when we actually are streaming 4K. I would know because I have to turn the encoder on to do if it's 4K, and it's expensive, so we don't turn it on. We don't turn it on all the time. So, but so the couple things. One is we're moving towards what I'm calling 2.5. Of it, and that 2.5 is that we're moving over to ISO 2.0. I know it's very confusing. It's the nomenclature, but that's going to give us. You will see better color. You'll see better, this is some stuff where we've noticed, you'll see better color. You should see better frame rate. We have isolated audio, so we can eventually sync every person individually in the system to get them right. We should, and then we can also, affect levels and everything else for each person. So those are the kind of things that we think that we will have within the next 6 weeks. Should be running. And so we think it's going to get, I think, noticeably better. As we move forward. So stay tuned for that. And we're also going to be moving more and more towards local graphics and then separate feeds that are coming in. If they come in 4K, we're going to do some more testing with LiveView, 4K HDR, and trying to insert that into the 4K stream over top of what we're doing here. And that will theoretically look really nice. So anyway, stay tuned for that. All right, next question.
Next one comes from Clive Kirchner in Souk, British Columbia in Canada. Are the green-gray screens that attach to the back of a chair good enough, or should they be avoided?
Go ahead, Josh.
Well, I don't have any personal experience with this, but Frankie has, and he was able to pull things off pretty well, even with not the best circumstances. Seriously though, the problem with the green screen.
Is that the guy who put the green screen on the bike? And he's like in a meeting. There's somebody that's like posted ones where he's
awesome.
This is just he's walking around.
He's officially my hero. That is the craziest thing I've seen in a long time.
Yeah, there we go. then he's in a meeting. He's in a meeting on horseback with a gray. Yeah,
he's been able to achieve above average results. I can't really speak to that, but
the green cummerbund makes it.
Anyway,
but on a more serious note, the problem with these things is that there's not a lot of separation from you. Even if you did want to do the chroma key, you're going to get some spill because it's right directly behind you. And for the gray screen, it's probably worse because that you definitely want. The separation from the background. Even a fast aperture lens that typically could separate you from the background if you have the background too close. Usually the first thing I'll suggest for guests is can you get the background any further away? So I wouldn't recommend it in best case.
You go, Jason.
Josh nailed it.
Yeah, there are folks that you can get some removal back there, but to what's been pointed out, you'll end up losing a lot of the hair detail, and that, and sometimes you'll end up with erratic, things going in and out. Definitely, I would highly recommend. Yeah, as everyone said, I consider 3 to 4 feet to be the minimum that I would put a green screen, and typically I'm shooting for 5 to 10 feet. But when I get less than 3 feet, I'm usually problematic because you want to light that background with a separate light as well, so that you can control the exposure and the evenness without it affecting the subject. Next question.
Next one comes from Bo Cordell in Charleston, South Carolina. He asks, aside from an Atem, is there a good remote focus knob for the Blackmagic Design Pocket 6K?
Go ahead, Jason.
Aside from the app, which of course isn't ideal, you can absolutely just kind of get one that isn't designed specifically for the 6K. Tilta makes them, Pilot Fly, PD Movie, and then you can get really expensive. But yeah, these are a commodity. Just look and find one that's well reviewed.
Yeah, DJI. We're trying to get better at that, but we've been saying DJI for a long time now. But DJI has motors. Red Rock Micro has motors that you can use, and then also someone just came out with Teradek also has motors. So typically you would put railing on the outside. You'd have the motors, and then you basically put gears on your lens, and that's going to give you the controls that you need. And then you have to figure out how you want to control those. Preston, of course, makes them, but they're a little bit more expensive, to do those. That's kind of the higher end version of those. And then, of course, it can be incorporated into the lens. So like the most popular lens we use for live are the Fujinon Cabrios, and we use the 85 to 300, the 14 to something or other, and the.
How much do those cost, Alex?
They cost money to rent. We don't own them. The 85 to 300 is probably $30,000, for the lens. But the 19 to 90 is really expensive. The 20 to 120, which is a lower quality glass, is only $10,000. I think it's on sale now. 10 grand or just a little under 10 grand for the lens. But what they have is, of course, they have servo motors on them. And then that servo, here's the key. The servo plugs into your if you have it won't plug into this little Blackmagic camera. You'll need to do a D-tap to control it. And then because of that, you won't really be able to control focus and zoom from your Atem switcher. But if you have an Ursa, you get it. It's a little cable that's really hard to get, called a 20 pin to 10. It's a 20 to 12 LEMO adapter that will go into. I think it's a LEMO adapter. Anyway, that goes from the camera to the lens, and it will power the lens, but it'll also carry zoom and focus information from the Atem switcher through the camera to the lens. So that's kind of the higher end. You can also do the same thing that way by taking it to a telemetrics head, and you can send that over and then control it from the telemetrics as well.
Oh, and middle things. Remember that little in-between thing?
Yep, absolutely. Go ahead, Mitchell.
Like Tilta, they make great cages. I've got my FX3 in one, and I think you could put that on your Blackmagic Pocket. They make a line of motors called nanos that engage the gears if on the lens, and they have the best fizz I've ever seen. It's just a very cool hand.
Is the FX3 Super 35 or full frame?
Full frame.
Cool, Bill.
Yeah, I also remember, and I think everybody's covered this pretty well, each lens, you're going to have different lens mounts on the Atem. You can order, on the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema 6K, you can order it with a standard EF mount, which most people do. That's kind of originally designed for still cameras, and they work perfectly well on video shooting. But the zoom throw and focus throws are a little bit different than serious lenses for broadcast and stuff like that. So you want to make sure that you can adapt things properly as to whether you buy that, or I think the other mount that they do is B4 or something like that, which will get you into the world of broadcast zoom lenses that work differently and often have remote kits for them. So what you buy to adapt your camera to this kind of shooting does matter a bit.
Next question.
Next question from Douglas Carmichael. What NAS unit would you recommend for people for project archival and sample library storage? Would it be worth it to connect to it via a 10 gigabit Ethernet versus 1 gigabit Ethernet?
Good, Mickey.
In terms of what NAS, there are many, many variables that come into play with deciding which storage system you would go for. These primarily revolve around how much storage you need, of course, how much throughput you require, and the amount of growth on both of those that you expect to be able to get with that single network attached storage unit. In terms of storage of sample libraries, it would depend on what your workflow is. There are some composers that start off with a composition template that immediately loads tens or hundreds of gigs of virtual instruments. If that's the case, you may want to move up to 10 gig or higher if you are planning to store your virtual instrument libraries in the NAS. There are some composers that go track by track and add the VIs as they go. You don't necessarily, with that situation, you don't necessarily have to have that large a pipe from your storage because you're only loading like smaller 5, 10, 15 gigs of virtual instruments instead of the hundreds of gigs at a single point in time.
Mickey, do you usually want to go to a faster drive like an SSD or NVMe when you start loading entire libraries, just so that you have the speed? Is that something?
Definitely. If you are gonna keep it as a single DAS, like a direct attached storage, there is a huge advantage with solid state drives, just because it loads so much faster. Instead of waiting a minute for a VI to load, you're waiting 10 seconds.
Right, absolutely. Go ahead, Jason.
Well, and Douglas, you asked this a few months ago, and it's still the case that it is a terrible idea, for the most part, within an affordable limit, to keep a sample library on anything over a network. It's just, as a rule, yes, it can be done, but really, you don't want to go there. Use it as cold storage and be happy, and Synology is pretty good.
I was going to say, Synology is probably the best average bet, for that. Next question.
Next one comes to us from JJ McKenna in San Rafael, California. For an Apple computer, where's the link located for the Insta360 Link Controller software? This was easy to locate for other platforms.
Hold on. It's in the. You got to read the instructions. It's in the box here. I think I actually have the box around here, but it's in the box. There's like a go to here to get it, and it's not. It doesn't appear to be on their website. It is it turns out to be a simple link. but I can't remember. I can never remember what it is, and I have the same problem that JJ has, is that I downloaded it, and then I don't think you can get to it. I don't think you can get to it from their website. I know it sounds very odd, but I don't think you can go to their website and randomly get it. So what you're looking for, I believe, is the insta360.com/link/guide, and that should have the controller download on it. Next question.
Next one comes from Paul Shadwell in Thurbenthal, Switzerland, here on the panel. He says, I watched the Queen's funeral and was fascinated by the camera placements. Seemed to be a lot of pan-tilt zoom mounts and pan-tilt zoom cameras. Some, and I think it was amazing views. It says axing views here, but that doesn't make sense. Comments?
I think that we're talking about possibly doing a second hour. It's up to Josh about what we do as far as the second hours go. But I think that one of the great things about PTZs is you can put them in a lot of places that's hard to put an operator. So especially if you want a lot of them. Also, if you're doing a very long procession, obviously operators have bio needs that the PTZs don't have, and so they can be so that helps too, to especially to deal with that. So there's a lot of advantages that you can put them in a lot of great places. You can put them in small places, and again, they are pretty. They can keep going all day. Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, I noticed there were some views from the top of the cathedral looking down.
Yeah.
Also, the placements were unobtrusive. You had to look hard to see them.
Well, and that's the nice thing. For a lot of these PTZs, especially if they're black or if they're, you can just hang them somewhere. You don't have to have a big tripod and a whole bunch of things. They just hang down, and they oftentimes look like an element on the, in the space. So they're pretty.
There
useful.
was one right on the arch going into Horse Guards Parade, which is actually in the top of the arch.
Right.
And as the people went underneath, it's panned underneath. It was pretty cool.
As I think someone else talked about it here, is that they've been working on that procession for decades. You never, because you only have a couple days to plan it, and so it's been something that has been in constant production or constant planning for a long time.
Yeah, and it was pretty much all BBC because I don't know if you could see the massive control room off to one side, but everybody was feeding off BBC.
And my guess is that they built the control room. They keep on updating it, like, oh, we're going to do this. Oh, yeah, we'll do that. And I'm sure it picked up speed, in the last couple of years. Next question.
Next one comes from Art Aldrich in New York. And Art says, looking for a KVM switch that can handle Apple's 6K XDR display. I have a MacStudio and a Mac Pro that need to share a screen.
Go, Jason.
Well, Art, I'm sorry, but I've got some bad news for you. Because of the way that Thunderbolt works, the chips, one of the reasons it's so expensive is the chips are actually handling the data that is flowing through, and they are on each side of the cable. So this is not something that can simply be clicked over. You could make, some sort of custom thing, but even if you were to pin it out, it's simply not going to connect the way that you want it to.
Next question.
Douglas Carmichael's up next, and he says, with isolated audio from each panelist, could we add an audio mixer position to office hours, remote mixing via a dLive mix engine or similar, perhaps?
Yeah, we have an X32 kind of lined up, ready to do that, and so there will be some audio that will be needed to be managed for this as we move forward, and we're going to be over time attempting to do it all in 5.1. So it should be a really fun thing to play with and learn. Next question.
Comes from our own Hershey Trividi here on the panel in Daytona Beach, Florida. I have a friend struggling with a situation with Atemos and pulling the content off SSD cards. The person gets like 400 transfer rates, and after a while it will bog down to 100 megabits or megabytes. I don't know which it is. Only info I recall is the hard drive is an Angel or something like that.
Go ahead, Mickey.
I'm assuming that's an Angel Bird SSD. I would run a bunch of tests to narrow down what is causing that eventual slowdown in the transfer. Is it the SSD itself? Is it the destination of the transfer? Is it your SSD dock or reader? Do a bunch of tests and try to eliminate which parts of the chain are good and which are bad.
Go, Jason.
Yeah, I mean, it could even also be the cable. The variance in quality of cables is staggering. And also you could just have a bum SSD. There's a reason that most of us on the panel have kind of standardized 2 specific SSDs that we know and trust that can handle the workflow that we are asking them to do, until they are full. And it's not by accident.
Now go ahead, Harshid.
Yeah, so what was interesting is we have talked about the Belkin cables that are able to push out 40, and the setup that he has, he's pushing it off of or he's pulling from Windows vMix. And so we were just trying to figure out, would it be easier to pull from like a Mac computer instead? And maybe there's a bog down there in transfer with Windows. But as we said with Angel, you're right, Mickey, with the name, and he's basically just getting a bogged down system. And I mean, my recommendation is first change out your cables, but
I don't think it's the cable. And I don't think it's a PC or Mac. We have this, so 400 gigs from an SSD. At 400 gigs is where we see most SSDs slow down. And we believe that it has to, we're not sure whether it's read, write, or heat. But we definitely see performance degradations. Like, for instance, this is an NVMe that I built. It's got a fan that literally, when it gets too hot, it starts blowing air through these fins to try to cool it down. And that does improve some of the performance of it. A lot of the NVMe ones that you build is another one that attaches to a camera more effectively, have kind of heat sinks on the outside to try to keep it cool. When the SSDs or NVMe's heat up, they do reduce in efficiency. But we've seen this for years, that if you move a big file or you try to copy something somewhere near about 400 gigs, most SSDs, and we think it's heat or it's just how it's addressing the data, will slow down. Like the T5s, we think it's just heat because the T5s, for instance, T7s are known for this. They go down to a crawl. You have a 1 terabyte, you move 800 gigs to a 1 terabyte drive, you can expect it to look super fast until it hits about 400 gigs. And then it just goes down to, it's going to take another 3 hours to do. Like it's just, and again, I think it's a heat issue. I don't think it's a cable issue or a platform issue. So I think those are the things to look at. You do get better performance out of things like this RAID. This OWC is the 4M RAID, and you'll keep on getting that performance out of that. So it's a $300 enclosure, and then you put the NVMe's in as you like. You can get up to, I think, 32 terabytes into this little box, which is kind of an insane amount of storage for online. And it's truly online. You're getting about 2,000 megs a second. Next question.
Ronnie Settle in La Plata, Maryland says, any experience with Zoom events, looking into it for a client wanting a hybrid event, including a main event and then virtual networking with different members of the team. Events include virtual vendor booths. Zoom webinar does not have breakouts, he notes.
Go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, Zoom events is well suited to handle what you've suggested there, Rondi. Their chat setup is something you can open up ahead of the event. So you can start sending engagement to that chat, and that chat will persist even after the event has ended. So you can have your VODs there for people to access later, and that networking can continue. There's an ability to, I used to call it Expo. I don't know if they changed the name of that, but the Expo feature in Zoom Events allows you to have concurrent meetings. So you can have different parts for your vendors to do as well. So yeah, if you'd like to do some testing, just let me know.
The main thing the only thing I would say there is that, and you probably don't have the choice to do this. But really think about what the end goal is, and not so much how to reproduce a physical event. So, for the virtual attendees, being able to, and the hybrid events are the ones that are the hardest to do great things. As far as design goes, when we are no longer constrained by time and space, you don't have multiple tracks. You just put them in series that are there. When you think about Expo, you really want to talk to someone. Does it have to look like a booth? Probably not. And so those are the things you want to kind of think about in a larger scheme. But I think that Josh is 100% correct on the rest of it. He was 100% correct. I'm just adding to it. Next question.
Brian Shandon, Sydney, Australia, is up next. For ZoomISO audio, is there any benefit to using a Midas M32C 1-unit rack over a Behringer X32 rack?
Go ahead, Mickey.
Assuming you are taking in signals and pushing out signals via the expansion card digitally, they're pretty much the same in terms of capability. The FX racks are the same. The channel processing is the same. So if if you're going that route, everything's coming in and out digitally. I would probably go for the M32 because they offer a better warranty than the Behringer branded products. But the X32 rack does give you flexibility just in case you need to bring in analog signals.
Yeah. We have an X32 we're using right now. I am seriously looking at the M32 if we think that we can get all the I/O, out of that. We can always, create a breakout box if needed as well. If we want to add that, get an I think it's an SD8 or 16 that we can just use if we needed to pull those analog signals. It's kind of nicer because we can just put them somewhere else as well. So, next question.
It comes from Colin Mulcahy in Dublin, Ireland, and Colin asks, with the Blackmagic designed DeckLink Quad 2 and its many SDI inputs, can anyone recommend any suitable pre-made cables that are about 2 meters long?
Yeah, and I don't think that they're mini SDI. These are DIN connectors. It's important because if you order a mini SDI to SDI, I don't think it'll fit. And I think that these are the DIN to SDI is what you're looking for there for these, and that's the card he's talking about is actually right here. So this is what if you're watching and you're trying to figure out what he's talking about. To get the higher density connections, you have these little guys here. And so these are about half the size of an SDI, a typical SDI. And when you get used to using them, the SDI feels massive. So, but these are not, so the way that these connectors, I don't know if I have a cable right in front of me here, they pop on, so they don't twist. The mini SDIs will go down and twist like an SDI. These little DINs will just pop in. And the thing you want to be careful of is that the lower quality DINs are very hard to get off. So that once they get them on there, it's very hard to pull them off. There is I can't think of the name, but they're all red, the red cables that come out that we've ordered from B&H. I'll try to find I'll put it in here. I'll find my order. But they are, they're better. And then the other thing to think, they just are easier to pop off. So the big thing that you're going to notice is high quality is great. Accessibility is even better. I mean, almost all of them will work. It's just a matter of how hard it is, because what you'll do is when it's hard to get off, you'll damage these connectors but because you're trying to get them to pull off. There's no twist. There's no obvious way to do it. You kind of pinch them and pop it off, and it's not a great experience on some of them. And some of them you just pull off and they come off right off. And I'll see if I can find the list for that. Go ahead, Mickey.
Those connectors are called DIN 1.0, 2.3. And for
I knew there was a number after it, but I wasn't ready to commit to what it was. I was like, I think it's 1.0, and I thought it was 2.4, but I was like, I can't remember what it is. I'm gonna let somebody else fill that in. Go ahead.
Yeah, for pre-made stuff like that, look for Alvin's cables. They make cables that are specific to different cameras, and that includes a bunch of Blackmagic.
And you said it's Alvin's?
Alvin's, yeah, Alvin apostrophe S. Alvin's cables.
Right, great. Jason?
Yeah, +1 for Alvin's cables. I basically think that there are two ways that these things connect in. The cheaper ones, when you push them in, they kind of click lock over. And then you have to do this strange, do I have to push it or pull it? And pulling it towards the thing while you're trying to lift the cable out is a fool's errand. The better ones will actually require that you go down and then they lift off. And those, so really you're going to feel how hard it's going to be the minute you do it. And that card Alex is holding is $1,000. So you really want to get this right.
Yeah, and typically, if it's Alvin's, I'm going to trust Nikki on that one. If it's not, buy one, see how it works. I mean, I bought 5 different ones and picked these. Laird is the ones that I use. Popped into my head after, I don't know why. I haven't looked at that name, but Laird are the ones that I've used in the past that I've ordered. LAIRD are the ones that I've used in the past from B&H. Next question.
Next one comes from Tommy Shantz in St. Paul, Minnesota, and he says, "Where have you been testing and or proving out Office Hours 2.5?"
Well, a bunch of us are banging on ISO version 2 right now. There's a lot of discussion about how we're going to do it. I think that the move is going to happen in the next 2 weeks. So, I mean, we'll start the move. And I think it'll be about 2 weeks from now is when we actually start pulling things out and moving things around. So JJ, I think, may try to move some of the stuff. I think we're going to try to move the software to ISO 2 version 2 over next week. And then start adding the other features that brings in. We're also waiting for a little bit of hardware, which we expect next week. So so we're going to see how that goes if that shows up, and that'll allow us to have some more control over color as well. Next question.
Tony Mobley in Noonan, Georgia, our friend, says, I was able to do my first official LinkedIn Live thanks to Liberty, Mickey, and After Hours. I use StreamYard. Can this be done with MimoLive?
Yeah. Yeah, you should be able to do it with MimoLive. So I think that that's one of the things I'm going to be testing with ZoomISO is to using, again, as I said before, siphon and loop back and everything else, trying to find the smallest little box that I can possibly do a whole show in. So I believe that box will be a studio, MacStudio, with all the stuff running in it. And so it's like one of my little labs that I'm working on right now. And you'll see me popping into our labs next week. So I'll start, probably coming in a couple times a week to do it. I plan to do it mostly in front of all of everybody. I'll ask questions and be lost, and I don't understand why this isn't working. And then Wansi Robles can set me straight, and Mickey and Josh, and hopefully some of the folks from the Zoom team. Next question.
Next one comes from Ronnie Settle in La Plata, Maryland again. La Plata. Suggestions for camera settings for an LED wall. I seem to have a refresh rate scrolling. Also, the lens settings seem to affect how the LED wall appears. He's getting moire, possibly. Specifically on a Sigma 24-70 on a 6K camera. Yeah, so it's going to be really hard to use a 6K camera. One of the big things that you need to do is that the screen and the camera need to be gen-locked. That's why you're getting the scrolling. So the scrolling is coming from the gen lock. The moire is coming from two reasons. There is a filter that is not on a lot of the Blackmagic cameras on the sensor that makes a big difference in how they handle LED walls. And so Blackmagic cameras don't get along with LED walls that well, but no camera really gets along with an LED wall. The reason you're getting moire is less about the camera and more about the pitch of the LED wall. So we don't recommend anything over about 1.7, 1.8 mil pitches, and those are more expensive. And when we do it, we try to get below 1.2. There's a couple of limitations to that, is that you can't curve it. So your minimum pitch on an LED wall to curve it, if you want to do a space kind of thing, like the ILM space, is about, or the Void or many of these other ones, is about 2.3. And so you can get that, but it has to be off in the distance. The moire won't show up all the time. That's why you're probably noticing that it's happening and then not happening. It happens at certain zoom angles, and so if you're at an angle to the camera, every camera will be different. So you have to find those zoom angles that are going to generate the moire and not use them. so that's, I mean, if you already have the LED wall and you already have the cameras, the only thing the one thing you do have to do again is gen lock it. And the second thing that you have to do to keep it from scrolling. And then the second thing that you have to do is find the zoom locations, and then a lot of times when we're using larger cameras, we're marking those like, hey, you can't go there. And we don't do a lot of slow zooms into the stage because you're going to go through your moire point. So we've definitely shot whole shows with lots of moire, and the viewer never sees it. And the reason they don't see it is because we just wait until we get to the place where you just don't see a lot of big moves. The other place you'll have trouble is it's a zoom and a position issue. So if you have a jib swinging down through something, you'll swing through a moire point, as you go through those. So those become more difficult as well. The other thing to know about shooting LED walls is that they have a tendency to they will defeat the temporal compression inside of your encode. And so what will happen is they'll suck up all the bandwidth that you were going to use for the person who's standing in front of them. And so one of the things you'll notice in a live stream is that the wall will look great and the person will sometimes be reduced to a handful of blocks.
And that is because the LED wall isn't being perfectly resolved. So the other thing you can do is shorten your depth of field, move the person away from the wall. You want to get to a point where none of the pixels on the wall can be, even a bump can't be resolved inside of your depth of field. And you see that in Mandalorian, you'll actually see an odd bokeh. And the reason you see that is because they're using that LED wall. It took me a long time to figure that out because I didn't know what they were using when I watched it, but I couldn't. Bokeh was driving me crazy. It wasn't a moire. It's just an odd look. Anyway, next question.
Douglas Carmichael asks, with the greater affordability of video hardware Blackmagic design at all, many smaller club venues are adding video to their production mix. Would video as a service, an agency, remote Belfast-style operation have a market for those venues?
Go ahead, Bill.
Maybe. There's a little bit of complexity to deal with here if you want to do that. And part of it is that bars tend to run on a pretty narrow profit margin until they get to the place where their overhead is made. And then, because the cost of serving drinks is generally substantially more lower than the cost they sell them for, their profit is made when the club is full. They get past that, meeting their obligations, and then each person coming in really does add to profit. So anything that encourages people not to come to the club is going to have a direct impact on their bottom line. You also have some things like licensing of whatever music or content they're there that can get a little iffy. It's possible that you could turn this into a reasonable business with the right circumstances and making sure things are licensed and everything, but it's a little bit iffy in my things just because of that thing that bars live or die on the people coming through the door.
Yeah, I think there's some pretty big opportunities. There's bars that I think that what we really want to think about is a network of bars that are interacting and supplying each other content. So imagine, a accidental theater having an LED wall that is behind people or whatever, but you can cover it up when someone's playing there. But when you open it up, that can be bringing in an artist from Zimbabwe or Australia or Tokyo or whatever. Now that's an added feature, to come and have a drink with friends and see a band from somewhere else. So, and for the band, it means that they could, if you had a large enough network, you could basically play to more bars than just the one that you're stuck in, wherever you're at. Maybe you don't have the money to get out of Boston, but you could be theoretically playing to, a lot of different places. So that's something to think about. Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, that's a wonderful idea. In my experience, it all comes down to who you know. I've never had somebody say no to letting me shoot in their club. That said, they were good friends of mine, and I never asked for money. So there you have it.
Yeah, but I think that interaction between the bars would be useful. And some of them are sources, some of them are receivers, some of them are both. And I think that's the future. Next question.
Gene Wilder, Lafayette, Indiana, says, I had a weird quirk yesterday. I tried my DJI Mic Pack and Rode Go 2. Both had severe interference, and I had to swap over to the godox backup. Have you ever seen 2.4 gigahertz interference bad enough to completely block mic sets? Wasn't there during the test.
Good, Mickey?
Yes. A lot of these 2.4...
The answer is yes.
A lot of these 2.4 gigahertz and 5 gigahertz wireless audio and video transmission systems employ frequency hopping to get over the fact that these bands are extremely crowded. They need to keep a buffer of, say, audio to be able to bridge that frequency hopping point in time. Once that amount of buffer gets emptied up, it will need to rebuild that buffer full again before it starts transmitting. But if it just keeps on hopping and hopping and hopping without getting a chance to rebuild that buffer, it will never transmit. But saying that though, every single wireless system can be susceptible to interference. So you should always have a cable backup, no matter if you're using a $300 wireless kit or a $4,000, $5,000 per channel wireless system.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things is also, where was the person wearing the belt pack? So if they're wearing it in their back as opposed to the side or to the front or those types of things, you want to make sure that it doesn't have to transmit through large bodies of water. And those bodies of water on a set are usually people. So it stops. They're pretty good at stopping the bandwidth. So you want to kind of think through that as well. Next question.
Chris Widener in Lafayette, Indiana says, Alex, that 12-volt power adapter you linked works great, even powers my MacBook. Can anyone recommend a power over Ethernet plus switch that can power off 12 volts?
One thing to think about there is an inverter. So, you're now getting to a point where you may want to just think about inverting from the 12 volt that you have there in the car to actually get Edison connections, so just a regular plug that's going to go into there as you especially start doing PoE, because it's going to now draw a lot of power. So I would probably move to an inverter. You can either do that through your the easiest way to do it, of course, is the cigarette lighter, or whatever they call the accessory port now. You can plug it in there and pull it, but it only has a certain amount of power of amperage that it can push through there. To get higher amperage, what you need to do is spool a wire through your dashboard, and then you're going to hook that to the positive on your battery, or there's a couple different places to do it, but the easiest way to do it is to attach it to the battery at the positive end and then ground it. And now you're going to be you have access to it. And I have to be very careful with this, because if you leave it connected, it will drain the battery to zero. So you just need to make sure that you're turning it on. Usually when we've done this, we have a hard switch and it's got a light and it's, you can look down and see that it's on, and we're very careful about it. We can unplug it in the interior, but we've mounted those to the interior of the car, and then we can pull it. You can also get more power. You'll be fine with a PoE switch just with the car battery. But the other thing you can do is you can keep the engine running and pull enough power to, run lights, and all kinds of other things. Not old lights, but LEDs and so on and so forth. You can run a pretty little. I've run some relatively useful sets with a truck, big truck running, and having just that inverter there. Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, just the same as putting subs in a car. It's also relatively easy to put in an ignition switch and leave that as a remote turn on. Alternator wind can be an issue, but at the end of the day, it is all one big circuit, which is why as long as you've got bare metal, you're grounding. Absolutely. Go ahead, Ken.
Yeah, as an alternative, it's not a cheap solution, but it's what I use in my motorhome is very big batteries. I use a EcoFlow Delta Max, and that you can, so that gives you kind of the direct power out from that battery, and you can also then recharge that from the accessory or cigarette lighter. So when you're driving, you can keep that battery fully charged. But that, the one that I use can run anything, any domestic appliance you can plug into it, from a big lights or anything, you can plug into that battery and do that. So that's a way of keeping it relatively simple, because then you can obviously then take that battery out and use it elsewhere as well.
And Chris, you might want to look into a company called Jackery. They make great batteries. I bought it because Chris has Jackery batteries. That I bought it because Chris had already recommended it. So go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, I have actually similar projects. I'm building this. These are 18650s, and I have there are 25 of these boards with the battery holders. They put out 24 volts and then go through an inverter.
Just don't put it on an airplane. Whew.
Yeah, that's the drive. That's the drive version.
No.
And what in the case? And what are you using those for?
I'm looking to use them to see if I can run my office here through go off grid with my office. So, and I have a set of, you can see them behind me, a set of 4 solar panels, which will charge this up as well.
Yeah, that's great. Next question.
Josh Kaufman in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and here on the panel says, can anyone recommend a good collaborative task list platform to share with colleagues and clients? Simple to use, multi-platform would be best. Might the tools found inside project management applications suffice? If so, what's your favorite?
Good, Dave.
Well, for me, I've been through the wars with that. I used details in the early days, Microsoft Project, all the rest. And one I've come to really like is OmniPlan. OmniPlan, unfortunately, is only Mac. So if you're looking for cross-platform and all that, but OmniPlan also has collaborative layers and where teams can work together and share information through it. And you can track all project elements. You can keep your tasks up to date. All of the elements that I've needed in a production for planning and execution came through OmniPlan in the last 10 years.
Dave, I think that's your first answer. Well done. I think welcome to the panel. So yeah, it's great work. Richard.
Yeah, as someone who's run small charities for a long time, finding the right task management software or program has been a task within itself that I wish I had a program to help manage. But Monday.com has been our favorite recently. Monday has also got quite a large charitable offer. So for smaller nonprofits, they have free options as well as grants available. And we've found it for collaboration, a very handy tool to have.
Does it work all week round? Just
no, because we only work on one day. That's the
okay, they're getting everybody to the 1 day work week. All right, next question.
Next question comes to us from Mitchell Hill in Wilmington, Delaware. Did they make a flat shield for blocking RF? My Studio Technologies 205 sits just over the under desk mounted M1 Mac.
Mitch, are you getting little some effects?
Yeah, I started out with my telephone preceding it, so that sound your phone makes on your sound system, like,
yep.
I got a call coming in. But I moved that over here, and now it's occasionally making the Studio Technologies monitors making a little tick, tick, tick sound, and I realized that I have it mounted just over where my M1 is under the desk. So I'm wondering if there's a flat Moo shield or something that I could stick there.
Go ahead, Bill.
I think you need to do a 220-volt Faraday cage around the whole thing. It should be pretty simple. No, but literally, I mean, you can wire up, if you have an RF problem, a little tiny Faraday cage that kind of curves around it might just be enough to get it out of there. You can do it low voltage.
I think that'd be great. And I expect pictures. That's all I'm saying.
No, I'm not going to do that. But don't they have a material, like a heavy, leaded material that you can stick there?
Yes, get a lead blanket. You'll be just fine.
I would bring this up with Studio Technologies and come back and tell us what they said.
Okay.
Because I don't know what it would be, but they may. It can't be the first time, because I have the same problem. I have to keep my phone, this phone, on the other side of my desk, or it will be picked up in my 205.
Do you hear like a tick, 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 tick sound every once in a while from it?
I hear like it's not as bad as the old 3G, but it's definitely enough clicking that I knew what it was. Like I knew what I was hearing when I first got the 205.
Well, next question. I was just going to say quickly, thanks for the after hours people for helping me with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Next question.
Clive Kirchner in Suit, BC, Canada says, I believe Ken was testing Descript and wondering how he found it. Ken?
Go ahead, Ken.
Yeah, it works really well. I don't use it anymore because it realized it stops you from basically better improving your delivery. So because you know that you can kind of fix it in post, it's much better to.
How does it work? What is Descript? Can you explain to folks that don't know what it is?
Yeah, it's a software program. So if I'm speaking to camera and all my ums and ahs in that I constantly say, which I have to remember not to say, it can take all of those out. It can even, if you misspoke a word, you can type in what you should have said, and it will learn your voice and replace the word that and put in a word that you actually didn't say. It's quite.
That's not weird at all.
Cool piece of software. No, not at all.
I can't imagine any problems with being able to just type in and literally put words into people's mouths.
You can. Yeah. It did work. It works really well. But the best way is to obviously just keep practicing and not make those mistakes in the first place. But it works really well.
I think we should try to get them on. That'd be fun. That'd be a fun second hour. That'd be good. All right. We are changing subjects. we're end of the first hour, into the second hour. Didn't want to go over it all because I know this will be a full hour. So we of course covered IBC. The team covered IBC, and it was quite a thing. A lot of planning, a lot of build up. We had, and I'll let the team really talk about all the details, but it was amazing. And so the team has really is put together a little bit of a presentation and to show you a little bit how it worked. These hours are some of the most valuable. So while you're watching, watch through it. You may glaze over a little bit because there's so much data, because they did so much work. Keep up with it. Write questions down. Get them in here. This is the time. This is the one time you've got the whole team here, or not the whole team. We couldn't even fit the whole team. You got some people on the team that can answer some of your questions, and this is going to be your best opportunity to grab those questions. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to Richard and let him start with the overview and kind of run the presentation from here. Does that work, Richard?
Yeah, go for it. Hopefully we won't have people glaze over too much.
It's just so much data.
I'll just inflect my voice every so often, just like really loudly. You
just got to blow something up every once in a while. So the we just play an explosion and then we'll come back. It's just that I found that with these, it's so much data that it's just, for people who haven't seen it before. So we'll try to stop, and if you ask a lot of questions up, as you're watching, we'll try to stop every once in a while. It's incredible data, and it's really doing the projects and breaking them down for everyone is one of the most important things that we do as a group. So, these are in my opinion, some of the most important second hours that we do. Okay, good. Take it away, Richard.
Yeah, I have posted the PDF for this presentation into the Discord in office hours under IBC discussion, as well as in the office hours, so the main office hours discussion. So feel free to have a look at it. We'll not delve too deeply because we have team members here who can answer questions, but we've gone into a fair bit of detail with the overall system and a little bit of detail upon the planning, because this show is slightly different than the other shows. We had 3 large conventions that different team members have done up until this point. But this was one where we kind of set out a little bit further ahead of time to kind of do something slightly differently. So we wanted to make a tighter show. We wanted to challenge ourselves by having like as tight a visit at each booth, live visits at each booth as possible. We wanted to have a show where we were, a large percentage of the team were traveling internationally to get to it, which cannot be underestimated as a difficult thing. And we had a larger team overall who were kind of staffed slightly differently structurally. So I'll just go briefly into move into the presentation itself. In that we have one country and a number of different people traveling to it from 4 separate countries in Europe. We had the field team arrive into the Netherlands for Amsterdam. So already we have multiple countries transferring into another. All of our kit had to be transferred and moved over. All of our personnel had to be transferred and moved over, and we had to then fly equipment and different things, which is tricky. But this is tiny in comparison to the entire team. Which I think, as Brian and the rest of the team have kind of identified in some of our docs, we had 11 countries involved in this production, all coming in virtually and physically into the Netherlands. So as we can see, we've got the field team here who came into the Netherlands. Then we had our actual production team scattered around many different places. Our panel scattered around in Australia and the US. Our graphics team scattered around the UK and the US and Switzerland and France. Our EIC team, our engineering team in the UK physically, but also in Canada and in the US, and then our understudy team. So just a huge global network of people who had to be brought together to achieve a really tight, small show. So this was our kind of little schedule of what we wanted to try and do on the actual show itself. We had only a couple of days. We were going to go live on the 10th of September. Most people were arriving between the evening of the 7th and on the afternoon of the 9th. So we had a very tight runway to get everything working and up and live. So the actual show schedule looks something more like this. where we had over several months of planning to get everything into line. An example of that, and Jonas couldn't be with us today, an example of that was Jonas's work on the Meccana side of things. So for this show, for the first time, we weren't doing it within the Office Hours 2.0 system. We're doing it under a completely different system, which meant that lots of the things that have been developed over the last 6 months to help support the show weren't there and had to be redeveloped. And we chose to do that deliberately so that, one, we weren't in the US time zone with the main master control. It allowed us a little bit more flexibility in the design of the show, and allowed us more practice room kind of in building up into the show. We were using a system based in my work in Accidental, but it meant that lots of elements had to be retested and rebuilt, and one of those was the graphics. So Jonas had to make an entirely new proxy tunnel for Meccana. The Meccana had to then go into a new system for SPX called SPX Social. We had to completely work with Tuomo to redesign how that would interact. So there's this whole other kind of side of things that's going on all under the previous 2 months in the build-up, where we're planning everything, we're testing the signals of what it's like to use the live view system, we're doing team meetings, we're testing the engineering system, we're testing the graphical system, we're testing the playout system. Just a huge amounts of lift to build into the show. So we probably won't go into much detail of it just there, but that's all in the PDF. You can have a look at later on, rather than me zooming in and out. So I'll focus a little bit on the field team first and foremost. So this is kind of what the field team would have on site. It's slightly different than what was planned. That's partially because whenever I flew over, our Ursa broke in flight. I really shouldn't have kind of dangled it out of the plane as it went, but our Ursa broke, and it meant that we were immediately moving over to our backup kit, which good example of why having a backup kit works very importantly with you. There was a moment where on the pre-record day on the 9th, I ran to the Blackmagic booth with our broken Ursa, going, "Can you please look at this for me? Can you fix it?" And they did. For very good people that they are, they did have a look at it for me, but unfortunately it could not be repaired then and there, much to my disappointment. So it heads off on an RMA soon enough. So we used, Ken had his Ursa, we had our Pocket 6K, and then the kit apart, this is kind of a simplified overview. We had our mix pre's for audio capture, and then we had a borrowed Lectrosonics set for Ken's team, and then a rented Sennheiser EK2000 for my field team, and then a very assistant accoutrement, as well as then the main feast of the live view backpacks that we then use to get the actual signal out. Live view lending us one backpack, and then Accidental on my end having a backpack of her own as well. So that kind of started to look more physically like this. So this is a photo, I believe, pretty much from the day itself, because and this one's slightly different I kind of use this one for a couple of reasons, because it shows the actual full rig. Some of the other photos we have are from the pre-record day. So here we have on the front of this is Field Team 1's kit, an iPad, which is then connected into Meccana for questions. We have then an external battery as well that gives extra power to the Pocket 6K. And then this is where we have our mix pre mounted at the top, and the very nicely attached Sennheiser with gaff tape onto the top, just to make sure it's nice and secure there. And then a couple of extra batteries for the mix pre as well, to make sure it would last a day. Then with Field Team 2, Ken had a slightly different rig, but very, very similar. So we have our Ursa, which has its external batteries at the back. Then we have the mix pre-mounted on one, I believe it's a road plate, which Ken can kind of, not a road plate, apologies, a endochrome plate, which he can expand upon. And then we've got our Lectrosonics on the top here, which are Velcroed in. A massive shout out to Lectrosonics and Carl Winkler for lending us those. In my case, we then had the live view, and this is video footage from the pre-record day. We had the live view mounted underneath the tripod. A little bit later, we mounted it slightly differently, so it wasn't on the handles. So just so that we could take the weight off our backpack. So that chain then is very simple. All the audio is going into the mix pre. The mix pre goes into the 6K, and the 6K goes into the live view. Because this is our backup system, we were using because the Pocket 6K is HDMI, we're using a Blackmagic converter just to convert the signal, because the live view backpacks are SDI only. So we had to convert that. We had a couple of different options on how to convert it. And in the end, this was one of the simplest options, just to pop it into the live view backpack itself. Then with Field Team 2, they had the two Letrasonics going into the mix pre and then into the Ursa, along with the Nikon lens. And we can see here that Ken rather heroically wore the live view backpack the entire day, and that's just a simple SDI cable directly into the live view backpack. It's out of shot here, but Ken can talk about it a little bit later. Is he had a massive battery tray rig to power everything that was on a separate little sled that went around with us as well. So as I said, one of the things that we wanted to do was to have a tighter show. So we had to devise a system for allowing the team to really quickly move from booth to booth. And from the experiences of talking to Rajan and Guy and the others on the previous field teams, we knew that arriving at the booth and making sure that the person was ready for us was one of the big problems. So we devised a really simple system just that would have the different field teams at their original booth. We would then send a runner to the next booth that we needed. That runner would kind of go out a couple of minutes ahead of the main team, and then make sure that the person was ready, that person knew we were coming, that they could count them down to our arrival. Then the main team would actually arrive, and then we'd be pretty much ready to go. And that system worked pretty flawlessly. I mean, it might be different from Stefan and Chris's perspective, who were the runners, but they spent a lot of time running, looking that route, making sure that they knew where we're going, making sure, Stefan rather fantastically made 2 maps for the entire teams that I think are still in the Discord in the IBC discussion, which were absolutely stupendous, that gave a complete overview of IBC and all the routes that we would take through it for each of the different visits for the live show. So it was pretty fantastic. So that allowed us to be really tight. So moving swiftly on into master control, this is what was behind the rest of the system. So again, a brief overview of everything that it took to kind of get the show up and running. I thought we would actually run out of computers to get the signals out to Zoom and things. Thankfully, we just had enough, but it was tight. So that looked something like this with the computers, where we have we have 3 minis running. We had a smaller iMac and then 2 larger iMacs running, as well as in a PC that was running our main graphics. Often with the breakouts, with these breakdowns, I haven't given maybe not as much focus to software, but these software vendors and softwares that we use were absolutely godsends and hugely important to each of the things that we did. From the ZoomISO version 2 that we got to use ahead of the show, so Andy lent this to us, a beta build of it, so that we could test on it for around about a month before the show. There'd be days where we'd be bringing the ZoomISO version 2 into the main office hours show, and we'd be almost running a separate show underneath office hours during the week, just to test every little piece of it as much as we could, and the whole pipeline. And then we have everything from Unity Connect to Lucid Link to QLab and Mix Effect, massive pieces of engineering that really help tie everything together, and the SPX universe as well, being our kind of main go-tos for both control and then the final graphics. So master control looks something like this. This is how it all kind of connects together, where we have the main at the top of here. We have the main ZoomISO machine, which basically brings everything out, all the 4 panelists down. Then we had our main playback machine, which again allowed us to do 4 different graphics outputs. We had SPX, which then was serving up an HTML page to OBS, which then would output that via keyfill into into the system for downstream keys. So in this instance, the graphics are these graphics are the Meccana graphics, the kind of bugs, the different things that would go on top, and all of this is remotely controlled from Dennis being in the UK, a different part of the UK from us, and then Paul, who's in Switzerland as well. Then we have our big live view servers. So there's 2 servers that are in accidental that then receive the signal in, and then so they would the original design of the show until we lost our URSA was to have 2 cameras per team. Unfortunately, that wasn't possible, so we needed a couple of big servers for that. These are LU 4000s, one of which again was lent to us by LiveView, and then so they're capable of receiving 4 signals each, or 1 4K signal per server. Then we have our output into both the Clearcaster, which then serves the actual show, and then these different outputs that serve the Zoom behind the scenes, as well as then the actual panel for the show. So there's 2 of these are in the actual panel meeting itself. So the panel could see the main multi-view or program feed, plus then the field feed, and then the rest was going to the control room stroke behind the scenes that allowed the rest of the community to watch the full behind the scenes as well. And Eunice actually recorded the behind the scenes so in all its glory. So it's there for posterity if we ever want to rewatch the entire show with as much comms as we would like to bear listening to simultaneously.
I think it'd be really valuable. Actually, we should do some kind of watch party. Talk about it. That'd be good.
It could do because there was a lot of activity in, shall we say, just before we went live. There was, I think, 1 hardware failure, and then a lot of difficulty trying to diagnose exactly what was going wrong. So there was a moment in those 5 minutes where those first 15 minutes where we're doing a pre-show, and I'm kind of a big fan of doing pre-shows, especially live ones, because they allow you it gives you 15 minutes to fix whatever's broken. As soon as you go live, you know exactly what isn't playing right, and then you've got 15 minutes if your pre-show is 15 minutes long to fix it. So there's a moment where
and for a lot of our pre-shows, we do. The nice thing about the pre-shows, you go like this, like behind the camera, just keep stretching, just until we're totally ready. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, there's a moment in the pre-show where I'm standing at the Aperture booth with Emma and Spike and Stefan about to go live, and I'm VPNing in to the system back in accidental from the show floor to try and get a handle upon what piece of hardware has not quite worked, and why, and what the diagnostic was, because we were getting different mixed reports from the comms team. So I don't know if some of that's in our comms for recorded posterity, but it's always fun.
Was it clean? Was it a clean show? It wasn't when it wasn't.
The behind the scenes will be clean.
There we go.
I can't talk for all the channels that we set up.
Yeah.
So yes, that's our master control, and then this is our audio chain, equally as important, if not more so. So we have then the audio coming, as I described, the audio with the field teams was going into the mixed pre's, which was going into the cameras, and then that was feeding the audio via SDI into the LiveView backpacks. That then comes out in the server on the specific SDI channel that it was also received on. So if we were sending to server SDI1 from the backpack, then that was coming out on SDI1 on the server side. So then that was de-embedded through a couple of Blackmagic converters, and then that went in analog into an X32 rack, which then hosted all of the different audio. And Craig from Toronto was then controlling that X32 rack from Toronto. That's all then. So basically, all the audio is then moved around through Dante. So we have ZoomISO audio coming from each panelist, going into Dante as well, going into the rack. We have playback going into the rack as well, and then that audio then gets served back out to the main show, but also gets served out via Unity Connect over to Detroit for the comms, where the comms is being hosted, and then it was also being sent via Unity Connect to Craig in Toronto, so he could listen to individual feeds as well. So there's a huge amount of audio moving. The audio is a lovely example of just the complexity of this show and how difficult this is to bring such a complex show together with even with such a talented group, because you can see already how much audio is flowing around and moving around, and without things like Dante, just how difficult that would be. It's a lovely example. So this is the behind the scenes. Audio is turned off for this presentation. So this is our behind the scenes. As you can see, what we have there is our, on the left is the main multi-view with our 4 panelists all looking very concentrated, as well as then our super source in the bottom right-hand corner. There are multiple graphics inputs there which aren't playing at the moment, but we had the ability to send through 2 or 3 different graphics outputs from the playback system, from countdown to titles and so forth. The one hardware failure we had on the day was actually one of the DeckLinks went down from the playback system, so we had to last minute the engineering team had to reroute everything that was going to that DeckLink out into all the other DeckLinks from the same machine. So that was one of the little hardware things we had. So you can see in this example we have Andy talking us through in Field Team 1 what's about to happen, what we're about to do, and we're going to practice that with him. And then whilst you're seeing that, John is live at the same time. So it's a really lovely kind of example of just the multiple things that, say, Mickey as the showrunner stroke spreadsheet manager was doing at the same time as Rajan, who was also managing us at the same time as then the 2 field teams are managing themselves, as well as then Brian and then the TD team were managing the overall show, and then at the same time the panel were talking. So you can see that this levels of different things that are all kind of managing themselves and being managed by Mickey and the rest of the team, and how complex that can be very quickly. So yeah, there's Emma jumping back into shot, ready to start and hand off the mic to Andy, and then we've got there is Field Team 2 is changed over. You can see on this live view, this multi-view, that we had the room for 2 other cameras. Again, that was because of our hardware failure. We couldn't do that, and we otherwise we would have had 2 other feeds coming in. So yeah, that's our brief breakdown. Tried to move it through as quickly as possible.
No, that's great.
But all of that is, as I said, in a PDF, and that the community is welcome to. It's there in Discord.
Incredible overview, and really, really great work by the whole team. I mean, just an incredible lift. And it's just, there's not probably, the hard part sometimes is you have a bunch of ideas, but without something to shoot, you can keep on testing things. The best way to test things, in my opinion, is just to get out there. And so in addition to providing an incredible value back to the members, it's a really valuable thing for us to just figure out a bunch of things that we may end up using in production later. This is a production where if things don't go perfectly, and a lot of stuff I work on, if things don't go perfectly, there's a lot of meetings, and people are upset. If in this case we have a little bit of room for error, we try to bring that down to as close to 0 as possible. And it's just one of the most valuable things to develop new things, is to have something that's real, something that's going out to the public, something that has stake in it, but not something that you're going to have to. You're going to lose money if you. Someone's going to sue you if you don't get it right. Or the people. So we're able to kind of play there. So really, really valuable, and just incredible work for the whole team. I'm amazed by what happened at IBC. Go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, I just wanted to make 2 quick comments. One was, I think it would be a good exercise to determine the value of what all this cost if you were to charge somebody for it, so that we always have a number in the back of our minds that this is what this thing is worth, so that when Alex is negotiating with for a booth or something like that, he has a chance to have a real number that we could justify. And then the other quick point that I wanted to make was, I watched it again yesterday while I was watching Office Hours for Tuesday, and I was amazed at how well everybody was coordinating with a live feed in their heads. and I was wondering what was the maximum latency for any one person, and how did you handle the handoffs back and forth? Because I thought that was pretty flawless.
Yeah. Go ahead, Mickey.
I think the longest latency latency of the IFBs for both the field reporters and the panel would be around 1.5 seconds, because the 1.5 seconds for the panelists to hear the reporters, because the reporters are going through a 1 second buffer on the live view. Add to that the hop from accidental going to Detroit and Detroit to the individual panelists. So that would end up being just under 1.5 seconds.
I was surprised. It felt...
I was going to say, still better than satellite.
It definitely felt snappier than I expected. Like, I was definitely surprised by the quality. Let's go to the next question.
Question comes from Andy Carluccio in San Francisco, and Andy says the team stopped by the day before the stream to capture B-roll from the Zoom booth. Was that used in production? How did you manage knowing if or when to cut back to prepared media, either from the B-roll or from the press packet?
Go ahead, Richard.
Yeah, I'll let Brian answer how we were planning to cut back and forth. But in terms of what was used, I believe the initial plan was that we would record B-roll for every booth. Now, the practicalities of doing that on the show floor on the pre-record day ended up being that it was deprioritized to some extent. So I think there was less B-roll available to the playback team than we would have wanted. And the assets team who were editing had a lot to do already. So I think, I don't know whether that didn't get edited in the end because it wasn't as necessary. But the plan originally for this show was that we would have B-roll for every booth, so that even if we didn't have 2 cameras at every booth, we would have other footage of the products to cut to. It would just play on a loop, and then the TD could take to it at any stage. So that it was meant to be like a fake live second camera, if we could have achieved it. It just wasn't. I don't think it was possible within the time constraints that we had in the end. But yeah, I'll hand over to Brian.
You go, Brian.
Yeah, as Richard said, the idea for the B-roll was to be able to get into some detailed shots. And so thinking about the run of show, we were moving between the live exhibitor booth, hopefully having 2 cameras, but then also being able to have the pre-record that's taking the time and being able to get into the detail of any product that the exhibitor is showing. As it became maybe apparent to some of the people watching behind the scenes, though, there was some movement around with assets. And so we really wanted to focus, of course, on the pre-records that were between the exhibitor booths, and they'd been shot the day before. So they became the number one priority. And also losing one of the cameras, as Richard was mentioning, on the trip across meant that we just stuck to a single camera for the live exhibitor booth and also the pre-record. So the B-roll still exists. It's in the LucidLink file somewhere.
Yeah. And we want to thank LucidLink. I don't know if we talked about it enough, but LucidLink made their network, their system available to us, since we were using it to move all the files back and forth. And it worked really well, I believe. Go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, as actually the one that they're mentioning here, the Zoom booth, I edited the B-roll for that. It was ready, but the playback system was giving us such trouble that they couldn't rely on it to come and go and come and go. We did cut a lot of B-roll for what was provided, and any live event this big, you're going to make compromises almost in every step. And you're going to be finding yourselves without time or without space. In some cases, like the Sony booth, it was so crowded, there's no way to get the shots you want because you're fighting the elbows with everybody else. So we understood on the editing side that the B-roll was going to be slim or none. And as things progressed, we found other ways to accommodate it.
Yeah, and one of the things to think about always is that you want to be always pay attention to what your MVP is, what's your minimum viable product. And then there is the stretch, which is, out here. This is what we call, I tend to call the stretch. This is like if everything works and everything fits in and we push it all the way out, this is where we're trying to get to. And you just want to fall somewhere in this range. And of course, you want to try to get it to the upper ranges, but there's all kinds of things. And knowing where to cut, like, okay, we don't have this, we're going to pull back. Those are things that are really important. I think the team did that really well. Go ahead, Ken.
Yeah, they must apologize to the editing team because I shot all my B-roll in 4K and I was uploading it in as Blackmagic RAW because I had the luxury of a massive upload. Yes, and so Mickey quietly said to me yes for me to retranscode it in a smaller format to upload it to them. So they received it late and they still managed to pull out a great job. So thank you very much.
That's the thing about live and the thing about shows and the thing about that pressure is the constraint. The constraints are useful to learn how to deal with those constraints. I've had things where we just go, I know we were going to deliver this in Apple ProRes for a playback, but we're going to go to an H.264 because I don't have time to get it to the person. Like the ProRes version is 60 gigs and the regular version is 3 gigs and there's a 20 meg pipe. So you have to, and some people will try to be a perfectionist about it and then they just don't have anything. Now go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, it also needs to be noted, I think, that the B-roll and all the assets was shot the day before it was uploaded, sent across to the editors who are working across different time zones and different continents to be able to have that as B-roll and playback for the next day. So it was a very tight turnaround, and I think everyone worked really well to be able to get it to the point where we were able to use the pre-record.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, again, lots of valuable lessons, lots of opportunity to work with other people. It should not, it really is. You don't really know how someone's going to work in production until you work with them in production. And these are some of the hardest ones. They're uncontrolled. They're people, everyone's volunteering time, and you really get to see people for who they are. And I think it's a really valuable networking experience as well, to have people know, get to know what the other people are like in a production environment and whether they're serious or not. Go ahead, Dave.
I was going to echo your Lucid Link reference because it's the first time I've used it, and I was super impressed with it. I was expecting it to choke, fail, do all kinds of things. The only problem we seem to have as a team is it didn't connect to Resolve as well as it should, and so Adrian just switched to Final Cut, and we kept on going. Mm-hmm. But Lucid Link did the job. I mean, it took files and we got the files really fast. So I'd throw that in. Also, I would like to mention that all 4 of the editors that I worked with had done live shows before and knew what the pace was and how it was going to change and accommodated it. If you have somebody who's not comfortable with that layer, they can panic. And nobody on our team did.
That's great. That's great. Richard?
Yeah, I think coming again out of the previous shows, one of the learnings that we wanted to put into place was we have a large field team based in Europe. We have a time zone based in Europe, but we wanted to take advantage of the fact that the community is based all around the world. So we could shoot and shoot all the footage as much as all the way during the day in European time, and then upload it for those who are based on the north coast of North America, and then in Australia with Adrian, and then they could actually work on that footage on the European overnight and have it ready again in the morning. So having that global community was a huge asset, and having our assets team who put in a massive amount of work. I mean, the field team, I know from my perspective, our field team gave you some rubbish because it was just not great stuff, and the team did fantastic with it.
That's great. Next question.
Next question comes to us from Colin Mulcahy in Dublin, Ireland. When you used the LiveView 800 at IBC, did it receive a return video feed from office hours? Could you set up a camera with a talent feedback monitor?
Go, Richard.
Yeah, it was one of the actual discussions that happened early on and then late on. So in terms of LiveView has the ability to do a video return, but it's part of a package that's slightly more expensive than what we had available to us. So in terms of the package that Accidental has available, it's not part of our package. It's also part of an entirely different hardware chain. There's an entirely new, like a video return device that LiveView weren't able to give us on the loaner package. So it's available, and I think it's around about a 500 millisecond delay it can get down to. But the team early on decided not to look at a video return, partially because of the bandwidth. We were worried about bandwidth on the show floor. That then came back in discussion when the panel team started to join in and said how important it would be to have that eye contact with panelists who were remote. We looked at it again to see whether that was possible. And again, it was decided just on bandwidth terms alone, we didn't want to. I think maybe if you look at Alex's statement on the MVP, we wanted to focus upon getting done what we already were trying to achieve, and then let's add that as a stretch goal in the future. So Ken had a system ready to go with the laptop, actually, that he could plug into his video assist. So there were different options for how to do it that we had, even on the day. They're possible, ready to try, but in the end, we wanted to focus upon what we could deliver. But yes, LiveView is capable of it.
Next question.
Ronnie Settle in La Plata, Maryland is back with, in the spirit of always improving, I noticed a few missed audio cues. How was the audio controlled, and what did you learn?
Go, Richard.
Yeah, Craig sent me a wee message just there when he saw this question. So Craig, who was our A1 for the show, was based in Toronto. He was controlling the system in Belfast via VPN and an X-Touch. So he noticed that there was a couple of little VPN issues a couple of times for him that meant that the X-Touch wasn't as responsive. And he had a bit of a comms problem hearing some of the comms calls. So there's definitely room to improve there, and other systems to play with. But that's some of the things that he was facing from his side.
Where were the calls coming from?
In terms of who was calling for what thing, so there'd be a mixture. Mainly it was Mickey. We'd be calling different sections, but also because of the delay, a lot of I think from my perspective, I would prefer the individuals in charge to be hitting their cues. So rather than waiting for a call specific to bring up panelist mics, understanding that we're going to the panel section and then being ready to bring up that mic is probably the system that we've found works a bit better with this decentralized system. But Mickey can talk a bit more to that than I can.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I agree. I think I've with the workflows that we've figured out over the past year and a half, 2 years of the Belfast method, a lot of us have gotten used to knowing the flow of the show and being proactive with the cues. But I think there is a point to which it would be okay to reiterate things when calling out what's coming up next, which I think could have been helpful with these sorts of instances. That's certainly an RFI for me.
Good, Brian.
Yeah, so I had the job as show caller for the TD, and there was a lot of leeway given in terms of setting up for the vision switching about what's coming up next and what to look for. But we had also Jonas working with the playback, and then of course Mickey as showrunner giving prompts to the panel as well. So there were a lot of comms going on at the time.
Good, Richard.
Yeah, from show running the previous for showrunning Namens and Cinegir, Mickey, who was the A1 on those shows, would often look to me to give him the signal to unmute. And I found that that system was just a little bit too slow to respond. And that's why I have the preference, at least for what we do, which is moving, knowing the show and having cues. And then if something is needs to be more verbally called out than it's called out. So it's kind of a bit of a learning from previous shows and from the Belfast work, as Mickey has said, it works.
Go ahead, Liberty.
Yeah, just as one of the panelists, I know that at the start of the show, when I went back to look at it, it was like, ooh, there was a lot of time before I actually opened the show. But as we progressed, when Mickey did, he started to reiterate some of those calls. I know that was really helpful because there was so much sound going on behind the scenes. So I just wanted to plus one that on, because we had rehearsal the day before. And, you know, if it was like weeks of rehearsals or even a week of rehearsal, it would have been much different. But in that condensed time that we picked up as we went along.
Absolutely. Mickey?
Yeah, definitely. Just adding to what Liberty mentioned, the us working together as the whole team. Like we only had the day prior during the rehearsal and the actual show to get used to how people run things, how different departments decide to operate. So, like what Liberty said, had we had a couple shows with the exact same team, same process and infrastructure, things would have gelled a lot better. But having a lot of experience, at least with working with Richard and Brian, that certainly made things flow much smoother than it would have been had we just met each other on that day.
Yeah, and I think what's exciting is as we keep on doing these shows, and we'll do them in different ways, we'll have different approaches that we're we're going to get to a point where we have a role of how we do this, and we know how this runs, and I think it's not many people get that opportunity to do this and to build a global production, for this. This is, being able to have 20, 30, 40 people working on something globally, it just doesn't happen that much outside of really large broadcast where it's really expensive. Like this, doing a live event with this spread out doesn't happen very much. Go ahead, Richard.
Yeah, just to add on to what Mickey mentioned, it takes a while for a team to build up a shared language. So anyone who's run productions before, it can take a lot of time for a group of people, no matter how many times you communicate something in how many different ways, people will pick it up in very, very different ways. And building up a shared language and a clear understanding of what everyone is actually there to do can take time. And the rehearsal process helps with that because it immediately allowed us to see where some people misunderstood what the run of the show would be or misunderstood certain elements. But at the same time, we only got to do one rehearsal and the show still, and as Mickey said, it's just the rehearsal and then the show itself. So logistically, give yourself time. For anyone who's taking this on for NAB, give yourself time to bring the team together onto the same page and never feel that you're over communicating because it takes a long time to bring everyone into that shared kind of language and into that shared vision.
Absolutely. Next question.
John Prado's in from Las Vegas here on the panel. Richard, it was said that Jonas did a back of the envelope cost on the IBC production that totaled around 40,000 US plus. What was was that your understanding as well?
Go, Richard.
Yeah, I think that's the low end estimation. The estimation of the costs it took for us to actually do it without getting, without pay, without equipment hire, with it's basically, I think that's that around about 20 to 30,000 pounds sterling, I believe, is what the team put into it. To actually be there with flights, accommodation, equipment, all these kind of things. I think that's roughly where it comes into. So I think the 40K back of the fag packet is a lower end estimation of the actual cost.
Yeah, go ahead, Ken.
Yes, I think it was nearer that per person probably would be maybe more of a realistic, real kind of costing if you put people's time into factor it. But as I said, I was saying to the crew when I was there was no better learning experience on where else can you go to be live film a broadcast at a big event, have press passes go around, work with a wonderful team globally. It's an experience that it's invaluable, and I really encourage, if you get an opportunity to do this, that we have, and we're doing many events, is to really, there isn't a better university to learn this, and this is an experience you gain from doing it this way. It's far more valuable than some piece of paper saying that you've passed this exam. That having an actual opportunity to be on the ground, be part of the crew, working with great people, and producing an event like this is a really valuable skill set that is that you can use.
And most people, you'll spend years and years and years before even, if I was doing this, to put it in perspective, if I was doing this job, I'd probably bid about between 200 and 250,000. That's the number that I'd be targeting for that. When you think about the number of people overseas, the pre-planning, the travel, people's time, food, the gear, rentals, all those things, that'd probably be in the ballpark of the kind of thing that I'd be thinking about there. But the other thing that I will say is that the College of Hard Knocks, great college to go to. It's not really high on the degrees, but the experience is
best school on earth.
They pass out. I hear that the College of Hard Knocks passes out drugs to help you learn faster. It's called adrenaline. So you pick out. You get to have the stress that it would take to do the job. And adrenaline is really one of the best things that you can use to learn things and to remember them, because it just gets burned in. So anyway, just great work by everyone again. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael's up next. Richard, you talk about a separate show running from ZoomISO 2.0 beta. Can you have two instances of ZoomISO connected to the same meeting?
Go, Richard.
Yes, you can.
There you go. You can have, you'll see as we start to do more of these tests in the mornings, that you can have any number of, they're just a participant. They see everything that's there and they can go from there. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, just want to add that it's similar to what we have in after hours over the past couple of weeks, wherein multiple people jump in with their individual ZoomISO machines, taking in the same sources to do their own tests.
By the way, I was talking to someone who wanted to learn an Atem switcher, and they're like, "What's the best way to learn the Atem switcher?" I was like, "Well, get a Sonnet box with an eight outs, go into your ZoomISO, or the not ZoomISO, but the Mini Extreme ISO, and the best way to do it is to cut a show with the 12 loops that we're about to start doing starting next week, because now how many times do you get 12 cameras that you get to cut between?" So anyway, that's coming next week. Next question.
Next one comes from Paul Shadwell here on the panel from the remote crew in Turbental, Switzerland. Was there where was the physical location or locations of the master control devices?
Go ahead, Richard.
That was based in my work in accidental theatre in Belfast.
Next question.
Colin Mulcahy, Dublin, Ireland. Is the MV6 used to create a local gallery view?
Go ahead, Richard.
No, in our instance for IBC, the gallery view was just a standard super source. We were running on an Atem 2ME production 4K. For office hours, for office hour 2.0, we do tend to generate a gallery from the MV16, but not for IBC.
Next question.
Douglas Carmichael, what cloud services were used on the back end?
I go, Richard.
Interesting question in that it was one of the designs of this show. We stayed away from cloud a little bit, partially because Jonas, who's one of our great cloud team proponents in office hours, was actually going to be part of the field team. So we felt that we didn't want him trying to dial in and do things on the system from the field. So we stayed on using a physical system that we already had in accidental. So I'm pretty sure the only cloud systems that we really used were really just the Clearcaster sending the signal out to YouTube, which isn't really a cloud system.
And Lucid Link, which is a cloud connection. It's not, but you're not really storing things in the cloud. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah.
I think I want to take just a short while to thank a couple companies that supported us, LucidLink being one of them, three L's, LucidLink, Lectrosonics, and LiveView. And also, in terms of Cloud Bedrock, which is run by Jim Hankins, allowed us to utilize a comm system that's very, very much tuned to what this production needed.
Good, Richard.
Yeah, thank you to Jonas and Dennis who just reminded me that Cloudflare actually is one of the ways that we've made sure that the Universe system is protected for control. So Cloudflare.
Next question.
Douglas Carmichael says, did you have any issues with cellular or Wi-Fi congestion with the LiveView units?
Go ahead, Richard.
In the end, we didn't see much congestion. The actual show floor, we were able to get on one unit 7 megs up and then the other unit 20 megs up at a latency of 1 second. We did a lot of signal tests from Belfast in low bandwidth areas to kind of check and see what signal we can get at what latency. So the main way that the LiveView system is, the slower the latency, the more solid your signal will get. And you can go up to around about 20 seconds latency at the high end and down as far as 0.6 seconds latency on the lowest end. So we did tests at 4K, we did tests at 1080, we did tests with multiple cameras at different cellular bonding. We found 4K in testing very difficult to do without having really good cell signal or Ethernet. So we then opted to focus predominantly on multiple 1080 signals. And we found actually on the days pretty good cell signal from most of IBC. I think we also connected the units to Wi-Fi. The 800s have the ability to connect into Ethernet and Wi-Fi as well as 8 5G SIMs. So I think actually there's updates coming that allow you to connect even more Wi-Fi signals. So we connected it to the main IBC Wi-Fi, and then we connected it to multiple SIMs, and all the way through, we actually felt that, my biggest worry wasn't the live views, was actually our individual comms handsets, which we're also working on SIMs. Andre bought some local SIMs for us, and Spike brought some PEP links that he took the unlimited SIMs out of, so that we could make sure that, especially the guests comm unit, that we would hand over to each guest so they could hear the panel and so forth, that their signals were as strong as we could possibly get. But in the end, we were, I think, quite lucky.
Sorry, I got on the wrong page there. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, as Richard mentioned, there were a lot of tests leading up to the show itself. But an issue encountered on the day was a simple cable got snagged and power got disconnected from the live view, thus eventually draining the internal battery of the system itself.
That's the one thing with the live view, is that the battery that sits underneath it has like this little cable that goes up that powers the battery. And probably the number one problem we've ever had with a live view has been that little cable it's in a backpack and it gets jostled about, and the worst part is it gets loosened. It doesn't come off. So you don't see it there, but I used to lease 2 live views. You look at the battery all the time because you're always afraid that it turns into this neurotic thing that you're constantly worried about draining the battery, because and so we used to tape them off, gently to keep them on there, because it's one thing that we have trouble with. Next question.
Colin McCahey in Dublin, Ireland said, how did your Unity comms perform? Go ahead, Mickey.
It worked pretty well. I mean, of course, the field team can let me know how it was at the field, but the issues that I experienced on the day was the typical issues you would get is like if you're not you don't have a proper microphone for comms that gets your signal to noise ratio a little better. So there were some instances wherein I would ask someone from the field team to repeat their message. But in terms of connectivity, I don't think we experienced much issues, if any.
Good, Ken.
Yeah, I had the comms on I put all the channels on and listened to all of them at the same time. It was brilliant. I love listening to comms. It's a real learning experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just one channel back to the live view, right? You can't send a comms channel back to the live view. You just send IFB. Is that correct? I don't know if anyone knows that answer. Go, Richard.
Oh, well, I was kind of sort of waiting for Mickey to answer on that one, but yes. So on the live view end, the Audio Connect system essentially allows you to put any USB audio device on this, and then connect it into the server and serve up to anywhere between, I think, 1 to 8 channels into the server.
Wow.
And then that server, then you can assign specific channels 1-to-1 to each SDI. So if you have an 800, which can be connected to all 4 channels, you're sending one channel back to all 4 of those SDIs. But if you have multiple backpacks connected to the same server, you can send 4 channels to each, 1 channel to each backpack. So as long as you can get it into that DAW, that audio device, you can pretty much send what you want down it for IFB. So that can be comms, because it's a two-way conversation, and I think there's 2 channels on the 800 that you can use.
So you can have one for the camera operator and one for the host.
Yeah, and they can be different. They can basically really cool. Then so we have on our
How do they
end,
come out? How do they come out of the backpack?
Just a headphone connection, so mic headphone connections.
Go ahead, Mickey.
And yeah, you can utilize those paths however you want to. It could be IFB feeds, it could be comms feed for your cam ops or field producer. Yep. It just depends what you route to it. And yeah, there are TRRS connectors at the back of the backpack.
Good, Paul.
Yeah, I was also listening to all the comms channels, but I could only speak on the graphics. So when I heard somebody having a problem that I could have helped them with, I couldn't answer them. That was the only frustrating thing about it.
It's hard, comms traffic is complicated because there's sometimes you can't say what you need to say, and then there's sometimes when people say more, it doesn't make it better. We like to have more people on the channels, and so it's always a tricky business. Next question.
Colin McCahey, right back from Dublin with, how was the Wowza Clearcaster, and was it used for streaming?
Go ahead, Richard.
Yes, so the Clearcaster was used to send the main signal to the Office Hours YouTube.
Next question.
Stefan Fischer in Würzburg, Germany, up next. It was a real pleasure to work with the fantastic people. Kudos to the folks who did all the work at home. The field teams, at least to me, felt to be in good hands all the time.
Yeah, it's great, great teamwork. Next question.
Dave Troutman in Edmonton, Canada. Can we talk a bit about the understudy participants?
Yes, Dave. We can.
Well, the reason that was a question is because I didn't have any understudies, but there were a lot of them on the teams. So people were understudying under the process all the way up.
One of the things that we're trying to work towards is not putting everybody into the fire all at one time, so that there's everyone. So once people have a little bit of experience, the goal is that you see a show and you think that's great. Then you listen to the comms and you start to get a sense of, and as these shows get bigger and, as people have more experience, the chances of doing the show, this is why I would get in right now, is because, within a show or two, you'll be working on the show if you want to. A year from now or 2 years from now, there may be like, oh, well, you can listen to the comms for the first 3 shows. And then when we feel like you know what you're doing, you can be an understudy. And then after you've done that for a little while. So there's not as much structure as there will be over time. So, but the goal is that you listen to comms. What we'd recommend is if you think this is a show you want to do, listen to the comm version of this show. And every time we do it, then you become an understudy. You see how this all works. You assist on those things. Then you become someone who's actually making that work. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, it's interesting because I had a thought in my head that because there were a few showrunner understudies that were under my purview, I guess you could say. In my head, I had thought that I failed at being a mentor to them, I guess you would say. But it's interesting because after the show, I suddenly started to get messages from the understudies, the showrun and understudies, saying that thanking me because they learned so much, like despite me doing nothing, actively doing something.
Right.
Despite me not actively doing something to train them, just them being an observer taught them things. So
it's so valuable to whether you're listening to comms or you're an understudy and you're figuring these things out. Up until 100 years ago, that's how we learned everything. Like we grew up with people who if you were in a family that was a blacksmith, you'd be growing up in that blacksmith. You'd be listening to things, you'd be seeing things, you'd be asking questions, and over a period of time, you would be learning how that all worked just by being around it, and being part of that. And then we decided to disassemble that, and I think we're getting to the end of that being effective. So I think that this is the way to learn. This is how we as human beings have learned for a million years. And so is to be around somebody else doing it and learning from them. Yeah, go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, it was just so valuable to be able to have this opportunity too. And again, I think having the department heads who are looking after their groups and then having the understudies as well for the roles, everyone just got to see so much. And because I think all the comms were open, all the messaging via Discord, everyone really saw this as an open production. And for me, I learned 100x going through this production.
Paul?
Yeah, I thought I was going to be an understudy what I was doing with the graphics team. And then Dennis very kindly got me deeply involved with it. And I had a lot of fun. And at all the years that I've been trying to get more involved in Pixel Core, this was the first time I actually felt useful.
It's again, I think that it's going to be an opportunity where a lot of people can get involved in a way that you don't have a history of doing it, but you get to kind of, and again, it's going to get harder and harder as we do more and more of these shows, because there'll be more people with that experience, that are sitting, that want to do it. So I would highly recommend jumping into these shows. And we're putting out a form that you can fill out at any time to say you're interested. And Josh has built that form out, and it's in the morning email. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, Paul got a promotion and his pay was doubled. So congratulations, Paul. It was really, quite the learning experience. I mean, producing, or I guess show running isn't something that I would prefer to do as my, day to day. But being able to work with Richard and also Brian, when Richard asked me if I would like to show run this, I said only if you would co-show run with me. So I learned a ton from Richard and from Brian, and I hope that us pushing for as much communication as possible to be out in the open also helped other people learn as well.
It's a great opportunity for everybody. It's just fabulous. One more question here as we kind of close things up for Colin Mulcahy in Dublin, Ireland. He said, were you using web presenters just as a webcam input for Zoom? So is anybody on the... Oh, Richard Lee. Richard, take it away.
Yeah, certainly. Yes, the web presenters were essentially just used to Zoom ingest. We also had a couple of Ultra Studio recorder 3Gs as well for ingest into Zoom to kind of capture the multi-views for both the behind the scenes as well as for the actual panel as well. I've found the web presenters to be more reliable than the Ultra Studios when connecting them to Macs at different times. But I was pleasantly surprised whenever we ran out of web presenters and I booted up our old Ultra Studios and they all worked.
And Mickey. Oops, Mickey, do you have a thought on this?
Oh yeah, sorry. It's not only Zoom that's, if you take a look at, rewind back to Richard's schematics earlier, it's not only Zoom that's in the pipeline. So every single element there needs to be able to run at UHD or 4K, including graphics, playout, all the pre-records have to be done at that resolution and also that dynamic range. So it's not just one point link in the chain, it's the entire pipeline has to be built out and planned for.
Just a lot of work went into this. One last question, and then we're going to kind of wrap things up here. Douglas Carmichael says, if Zoom supported 4K, could we have done the whole show in 4K HDR? And Richard.
Yes. So as Mickey was alluding to, the whole pipeline needs to be designed for 4K, and we could have. We made a conscious choice not to at a certain stage when we felt that through the testing, we wanted to prioritize as a group. And it's probably worth saying, and I probably should have said it right at the beginning of the show, that we had some really key things we wanted to test with this show that were different from previous shows. As I mentioned, one of those things is tightness, but we also wanted to practice the back and forth between the panel as well as the live reporters in the panel and the guests as seamless as we could. So we couldn't increase the latency of the live view units too high. So we felt that we didn't want to push that into a 4K place and lose that integrity of signal. We wanted to try and to focus upon multi-camera and low latency as much as possible. So yes, the entire pipeline is there in Accidental already for 4K. The entire pipeline is there in OH, or being built in OH for 4K HDR. HDR, especially live HDR, is a unique challenge in and of itself. And we chose, again, not to go down that path as a team just because we wanted to prioritize other things. But I believe it's in the pipeline for those who wish to take on that challenge at a later date.
And I'm not sure, Mickey, do you have a comment on this, or did I call on you on the wrong question the last time?
Yeah, I think I was called on too early, but to see my question to this answer, please rewind 90 seconds.
Yeah, there you go, exactly. Well, I know everybody here is unbelievably proud of this effort. Paul, did you have a last comment before I wind things up here?
I just wanted to say that Mickey's so ahead of the curve, he's able to answer the question before it's asked.
That's right. And that was entirely my fault. But anyway, seriously, I know everybody at Office Hours is extraordinarily proud of the job you can do. If I can use an American idiom with this entire European group, you really knocked it out of the ballpark. We were all just amazed at what was able to do. And actually, I've been around here for the whole 2 years. I had only a vague impression of the complexity of what this team pulled off. Thank you for helping us today get a look at all the work that went into this. It was fabulous. A couple of things coming up. Tomorrow, we're going to be talking about script writing. So if you're interested in that subject, sneak back here. And then Shoot Pro on, I think, Friday, Webcam and Squares TV with Michael Forrest. So those are the two shows coming up. We managed to do the equivalent of traveling nearly 100,000 miles for the show today. The Tulloch Traversal is 96,342. And it's just an amazing thing that everybody comes here. Oh, I think I'm looking in one of the things, and that must be the getting ready to leave the campers from IBC's coverage. So I don't know if we can switch to that, and you can see a little of it. This is just some of the stuff we had out there on location for this fabulous team to be able to bring you IBC the way they did. That must be Ken's motorhome taken away from there. So a fabulous effort on behalf of everybody who works with Office Hours. We'll be back tomorrow. Thank you to everybody on the back end. Thank you all to the panelists, particularly today. All the IBC people came here to help us understand what they had actually done and to fulfill the mission, really, of Office Hours, which is helping everybody get up to speed on this new production world we find ourselves in, and doing a fabulous job of it. Do watch the credits as they roll. All the people in the back end working to make this possible. And with that said, we're finishing up another show. Go ahead and roll the credits. Well done, everybody. Great job.
Wonderful job, so, Bill, is this the point where we talk about the truth of what happened at IBC? And we go into the real detail?
Yeah, you have 30 seconds. Who did what? How did they do it?
Mickey's left. We can talk about Mickey now.
Is Ken Jordan? How tall is he? I want to know.
Ken actually it's taller than Tlaloc. That's the real mystery here. How did Ken get so tall?
I haven't heard our headphones that work clear, so I'm frightened to do anything other than just sit here. Okay.